Hello and welcome. I'm Matthias from marmorworld.com, and in this tutorial for AETATS+, we are going to look at the following effect.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
So we are going to create the mouth of this car, and as the car itself already suggests, we are not going to animate this with thousands and thousands of keyframes. Instead, we are going to use a new tool called Auto LipSync, and you will be surprised how easy it is to achieve this effect with the help of this new After Effects tool. So this entire thing will be done in two steps. First, we have to do some tracking since the car is moving, and then in a stabilized pre-comp, we are going to create the mouth with Auto LipSync. Okay, here in After Effects, we start with dragging our footage into a new composition. And you can see that here we have now our car and it is not yet talking. And the first thing I want to do is to track its movement. And for this, I zoom in here a bit using the mouse wheel. And then I want to draw some mask using here the mask tool. And let me also enable Roto Bezier. And then I get nicely curved masks here. And I just mark some areas that I want to track that are good for tracking. Yeah? And let me just deactivate here the effect of this mask, and we draw here a mask around the second light. So these lights are very good areas to track because the rest of the car is reflecting and the lighting is changing and all of this. This is a bit complicated, but these are points easy to remember. And another such point that is also good for tracking is here the license plate. Yeah, so we just draw a rough mask shape around it, set it also to none. And now we want to track these areas. And if you've seen previous tutorials of mine, you might guess that I want to use Mocha for tracking and also Mocha Import Plus, which is a great tool from MarmorWorld, which helps you tracking in Mocha. And one thing you can do here is to select this layer and then just say track in Mocha. And now it has detected these three masks, yeah, and asks, okay, on which Mocha layers should these masks go? And here you have some tips. And the first tip says masks on the same layer are tracked as one joint plane. And here, indeed, we do not want to have three separate tracks, but all of these should just contribute to one track, which is, yeah, the track of this car. And therefore, we place them all on the same layer. Yeah, so all on layer 1 and click OK. And now Mocha is automatically started. Let me just move it here to fit in the screen. And you can see you have here these three masks. And if we go at the very end where I've drawn the masks, you can see that they fit perfectly. And if you look here at the layers, so I have to move here this a bit down because the interface is a bit compact. You have here one layer with all these three mask shapes on it. Now I can click this button here to track backwards. This takes a little while, so let's just take a break. Okay, now the track is finished, and if you take a look at it, it seems as if the masks follow the car pretty well. But if we enable here our surface, which is the corner pin that we are going to export, yeah, let me just roughly set it here around the area of the car that we want to manipulate. So roughly set it here around the front. And now we look how it's moving. You can see that here at some point it deforms in a way that we don't want. Yeah. So here the track is not perfect. And of course, we could now look for better areas to track or so. But here I also want to show you how you can improve a track later. Yeah. So unfortunately, this surface, this blue rectangle here, is nothing that you can keyframe directly. Yeah? If I start manipulating here a point and I go to another point in time, you can see here it is now also manipulated. Yeah. So don't try to keyframe this surface here directly. But one other thing that you can do is to go here to the Adjust Track tab. And this is the point where you effectively can manipulate this rectangle here, such that we improve our track without the need to retracking it. Yeah, so we go here, and the first thing we need to say is set master, yeah, because this means now this is a frame at which the surface is as we want it to be. Yeah, here it is correct, and now we go to this point in time where it's completely incorrect. Here, for example, and now we simply correct it. Yeah, so we move this here a bit, and this, and move them roughly there where they should be. And of course, this is by no means an accurate track. Yeah, so it really just makes this surface here roughly stay where it should be. Yeah, and also maybe here at the very end we can correct it like this. And let me see. Yeah, maybe here it's also not as we want it. And now with these 4 keyframes, yeah, you can see that this rectangle roughly follows the car. Again, this is by no means precise, but it is as precise as we need it. Yeah, we just need a rough track. And if you want to do this better, another thing you can do is to retrack it with other tracking areas, or also play with these parameters here. Yeah, maybe it tracks better with enabling perspective or with disabling shear. These are things you can try, but we are going to live with this track as it is here. Select our layer and click on export tracking data. Oh, probably this was not in the recording area what I said here. Yeah, so this shear and perspective can be enabled or disabled. Now we want to go to export tracking data, and the format we want to choose is the corner pin only that supports Red Giant Warp and Mocha import, as we want to use Mocha import. Click save, choose a file name. So I have actually here already a track from before, so I'm reusing this one and not storing this one here, but you can just save it and then go back to After Effects. Now, back in After Effects, we can delete here our masks, since we did only need them for tracking. And I want to duplicate my layer and call the first one mouth. Yeah, so I duplicate it by clicking Ctrl D. You can also go here to edit, duplicate in the menu. Then I want to load the tracking data, so I click on load. And now we just choose the file that we've tracked before, yeah, that we've exported in Mocha, and click OK. Then we need to tell which of these layers we actually tracked, and as they are identical in this particular case it doesn't matter, but we say here, okay, this Porsche one is the file that we tracked in Mocha, and we click on OK. Now Mocha Import Plus says that it has loaded corner pin data, and now we need to say what do we want to do with this data. And what we want to do is to create a stabilized pre-comp. I select now the layer that we want to turn into a stabilized pre-comp, and this is this mouse layer here, and I click on apply. Now it asks me which corner pin effect I want to use, and this one is built in After Effects, the CC power pin. And this one here is a separate plugin from Red Giant Warp. And since I assume that not all of you have this Red Giant thing installed, let me just show you this time with the CC power pin. I click OK, and Mocha Import Plus computes for a moment. And now we have here a pre-comp. And if we solo this pre-comp, you can see that it contains exactly this region that we've tracked, and it moves with this region. Yeah? And if I double click here, we enter the pre-comp, and just let me set this here to fit. And now you can see we have now a view showing exactly this region of the clip in an undistorted way. Yeah, so here essentially the region of our mouth that we want to create is now not moving at all. So here we can now create this mouth without caring at all anymore about the movement of it. So now we need our great new tool Auto LipSync, which we find under Window if it is installed, Window Auto LipSync. And Auto LipSync just consists of this help text here, which you can also hide by clicking this button. And then you have only this one simple single button that does everything the tool does. And what it does is it analyzes the voice of what should be spoken and creates a mouse that moves automatically according to it. Yeah, so a very simple and convenient idea. And of course, the first thing we need to do there is to bring in some audio that should be spoken. So I go to the project and I have here some wave file, some audio file prepared, and drag it in my composition. Yeah, if I now audio preview.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand.
Yeah, I have here now my audio. And now I go to Auto LipSync and I do not select the voice layer, but actually the layer on which I want to create the effect. Yeah, so let me just rename this here in mouth, and we just select it and click on Create Mouth Rig. And make sure when you do this that you have only enabled the audio for this voice. So if you have some background music or whatever in your scene, disable it, because otherwise the mouth would also move according to this background music. And this is of course something you do not want to have. So enable only the audio that the mouth should move to. Now the first step is you can set the position of the mouse, yeah, by these two corners. So if you look at the mouse layer here itself, we go here to the effect controls, we can see there has been created some effect called mouse corners, which is a beam effect. Yeah? And we go now, for example, to this point in time and set the start point and the end point of this effect where we want the mouse to be. Let's say we want it to be here and here. Yeah, you should not keyframe this here. Always work in a stabilized setting where the mouse stays where it is. Maybe you want it to be like here. Maybe this can be a bit higher. You can also fine-tune this later if you like. And then we go to the next step. Continue. And this step says, in case your mouse has such a shaped form, you now need to straighten it using this second effect that has just been created. Yeah. So before we just had this beam effect, now we have this effect, and you can use this tool here now to give your mouse a straight form, but here everything is already perfectly straight, so nothing to do. Continue. In case you had done something in the last step, yeah, where you straightened this mouse, now you could use another effect that has now been created. So you can see now really a bunch of effects have been created. All these contribute to the automatic animation of this mouse here. Yeah. So, and the last one is Shape Mouse Liquify. And with this effect, you now could go to this tool here and make your straight mouse again look a bit more natural. This seems a bit strange, like first make it straight and then undo making it straight again, but this is technically important, yeah, such that the rig technically works. But here again we have nothing to do because our mouse shape here is already perfectly straight. And then we continue, and this is a step that is only available in CS6, so if you have previous versions you don't have this option. This is because this uses some advanced expressions features that are only available in CS6. But this is very cool here, because what we now can do is we use again this Shape Mouse Liquify effect and don't mix it up with this Straighten Mouse Liquify effect. So this Shape Mouse Liquify effect we can use now to shape here the open mouse. Yeah? So we go here to this tool, and then we can say, okay, we can make this look a bit more interesting by making it look a bit less regular. Maybe I should get here a bit larger tool. This has some warp tool options, and we can go here to the brush size and increase it. And then I just want this mouse to look a little bit less regular, yeah, a little bit more interesting. Maybe like this. You can also adjust this anytime later if you want, but if you compare, this is without our Liquify, and this is now the little bit more interesting mouse shape. Maybe we should here format it. So you can really form it as you like. Okay, this is this step. We go to the next step, and this step is now about null layers that should be created for moving your mouse interior. So in case you have teeth or a tongue that should later automatically move according to the automatically moving mouth, you can create null layers for this. And we want to have all of them because we want to create these elements later. Say continue. And if you now look, what happens is that above our mouth layer, these 3 null layers were created. Yeah, and they are moving now according to your mouth. This means the tool does not create teeth or tongue for you, but it helps you animating your elements. And this is very important because, I mean, if the tool would create teeth, yeah, then the teeth would look for every mouse the same. And this is something, of course, that heavily depends on the style of the figure that you want to animate. So create your own teeth and simply parent them to these elements, and then they move accordingly. Very convenient. We are going to look at this in more detail in a second. And now this is already the last step, and this says the LipSync rig is finished. So everything is now moving as it should. And here it says, at each point in time where an O or U sound is spoken, you can put such a layer marker, which effectively causes your mouse to deform from its normal shape to more like an O shape. Yeah, if you look at my webcam here, O is like everything contracts more to the middle. And this happens whenever you put a marker. So this is very convenient. And if you wanted to have only a limited effect, you can even annotate it. Here say, okay, here I wanted to have an O shape, but only 50%. Yeah, not too intensive. But this is really fine tuning. So let's first look at how the mouse, the automatically generated mouse movement looks now without any of these markers. I click 0 on the keypad here to computer RAM preview. You can see it also computes pretty fast.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
Yeah. So you can see you have an automatic mouse movement now in a very nice way. There are some problems still, and one of the problems is that these borders of the car get contracted here somehow. And this is something we do not want. Yeah? So that here we have the deformation at the borders. And to solve this, we need to look at this layer here. And this layer has 3 masks on it. And these 3 masks are responsible for this O-shape deformation that takes place at some points in time. Yeah, when the mouse is opened, it forms some kind of O shape, and therefore you get also here this deformation here. And if you look at these masks, this is the mouse normal. This should be roughly be around the area of the mouse, and you can see it is here not perfect. Yeah, so this is a heuristic that you sometimes have to adjust a bit. So here we want this mouse mask to be a bit smaller, maybe like this. And then more importantly, this cheeks deformation. So this is the area where the tool assumes the cheeks of your mouse are, and they are deformed. And since they are so large here, it deforms this entire area and also the part outside of the composition even, yeah, which makes these artifacts that we do not want. So this updates here now a bit slow. To improve this, you can temporarily disable here some effects of the rig, and these last 2 are the most compute intensive ones. And now we can easily adjust here these points and say, okay, the region of our cheeks that should deform while the mouse is speaking. So the green mask is like the region of the mouse that should deform, and everything outside of this should remain completely untouched. If we now enable these effects again, you can see now the borders of the composition remain perfectly straight. Now another thing I want to do is, if I enable here transparency, you can see that everything behind the mouse is currently transparent, which is not so good if we go here in our main composition, because then behind our mouth here the background layer shows through. Yeah, to avoid this, we create a new layer So layer new null object, solid layer. And this should be a black one and call it mouth background. And maybe make it a little bit larger, maybe like this, just roughly to, still not large enough, so you can also scale it to fill the area of our mouth. And now let's look at and of course this mouse should go below, so this background should go below our mouse. And now let's take a look at how this animation is now looking like without having done any manual adjustment. So this is all generated automatically by LipSync.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
And I think this already looks pretty amazing, in particular given that we did no keyframing at all. Yeah, all the movement of the mouse was completely automatically inferred, and we can even now do better. And what we do to do better is I want to set markers at each point where the car says something with some O sound. And to make everything compute quite quickly, I just solo here such a null layer such that we effectively render nothing. Yeah, and if you now keep the control key pressed, you can scrub through your audio. And I select here the audio layer and click LL, so quickly 2 times L. And then you can see here also the audio, with control pressed, you can scrub through it. And then I select here the mouse layer. And
of course.
Here it says of course. Yeah, so we have this O in contrast to I mean. You have this shape like this. Yeah, but here, so I mean, of course. Yeah, of course. So we want to have here this O shape thing. Yeah, let me just activate this layer here again for a moment, such that you can see what is happening. If you go to this mouse layer and now set here a marker by going to layer marker, add marker or numpad star, just click the numpad star key. And now you can see this turns into such a more O-like shape. Yeah, of, and here was this course. Here we want to have this course. So look how the mouse is now looking, and now we set a marker. And now it contracts more, which looks more realistic. And now let's quickly go over this here and add more markers. You could, yeah, so let's put a marker here. Almost O, yeah, but quite O-like, but not so much. So maybe we say here, I double click on the marker and say here, this is like 80% O. Yeah, this means not as intense, but almost. So with this, you can modify your deformation even more precise. Yeah? And now let's take a look at, after we disabled here the solo, how this is looking like, the improved version, with the markers. Again, this is something optional, but it highly improves how realistic your mouse is. And in particular, with this ability to annotate these percentages, you can really fine-tune it as precise as you want.
Of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
You notice how much at the who wants to do, it now really contracts here the mouse. All of this can also be globally adjusted, and this is maybe the right point to explain this. So the rig is really flexible in that. So you have here a slider called mouse O-shape intensity, which means how much it should contract in general, when it is normally speaking without having these markers. And then you have an additional O-shape intensity at marker. And this is again a slider. And so if you want at all these markers that the effect is more intense of this O-like shape, you can just increase this slider here. Another thing that you can also globally control is how much the mouse should be opened. Yeah, let me just go here to some point in space where the mouse is open, yeah, where the volume is quite loud. You can just say, okay, I want to have here an upper lip height of and lower lip height of whatever. Yeah, here it is like 25% opening the upper lip and 75% opening the lower lip. If we say we want the upper lip to open more, we can set this here to say 40, and look what happened to the mouse. It opens more, and it opens more now everywhere. Yeah, whenever the mouse is opened, it opens more. Of course, you can also keyframe this if you want to fine-tune all of this, but maybe we keep this by the defaults. So usually the defaults are quite reasonable. Another thing, maybe in the preview our mouse was too much a bit located here to the left. So if you later want to fine-tune, to adjust the position of the mouse, you can go to this shape mouse, to the mouse split effect. And this mouse split effect has 2 points, this point and this point. And you can just keep it and drag it a bit to the side if you want it to be more open. Yeah, now you can see the corner of the mouse moved a bit to this side. You can adjust these points, point A and point B, and you can even animate them over time if you like, if your mouse has to move for whatever reason. Better are these pre-comps as I do it here, but if you want to animate the mouse and move it a bit for fine-tuning, you can also animate these points, point A and point B, which are the corners of the mouse. Make sure to also animate these masks here to roughly stay located around the mouse if you have heavy movements. But again, usually pre-comps are much easier. What else didn't I show you? Voice volume is a slider. Maybe we look at it better here. So we have our masks, and here we have our effects. And here the voice volume, you can see it has a lot of keyframes. Yeah, it's the analysis how much the mouse should be opened at which point in time. You can also look at this slider here, and then you can see whenever the mouse is open or closed, and you can also adjust this later. Yeah. So for example, if you want to say, okay, here at this very end, around this region here, these openings of the mouse should be more. It should open more. You can just select this region, drag it higher, and now the openings of the mouse here will become more. So also an option for fine-tuning all of this. Okay, the last thing I want to show here in detail before we look at the teeth is this shape mouse effect. So this is the one that allows you to form the mouse shape. And remember, we had one possibility to form the closed mouse shape and one to form the open mouse shape. And for this, we have these 2 keyframes. And you can adjust these 2 keyframes later. Yeah? So at this keyframe, you can adjust the open mouse shape using here these warp tool options. Yeah? So with these keyframes, with these effect, you can reshape this open mouse as you want. And you can also go here to the first keyframe and now reshape the completely closed mouse if you want. Don't start adding more keyframes here because, yeah, this keyframe is taken for all situations where the mouse is closed, and this one here for all situations where the mouse is open. Yeah, not just for this point in time, but really all of them. And this is driven by expressions. And yeah, if you have not CS6 but an older version, you will have here no keyframes, and you can adjust this manually if you like, but there I just recommend to keep one deformation being active all the time. Okay, but these are details, and now let's look at the last thing, and this is how do we manage to add here now some teeth and a tongue. Okay, so for the teeth, let's create a new layer. So we go to Layer, New, Solid. And here in the solids, this time we choose a white solid because teeth are usually more or less white. Call them upper teeth. And let's make it as wide as a comp, but only 200 pixels high. And now let's add some grid effect. Of course, you can use any other technique to create teeth. Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. So we just drag the grid effect on this here, and I set the blending mode to multiply, and I multiply a bit darker color with it, and of course this these two corner points need to be set differently. Maybe let me just solo this layer here for a moment to increase here everything to make it quicker. Then we can make a bit bigger border and also add some feather. Maybe like this. Yeah, this looks more or less like simple teeth. And now we set these teeth, of course, below the mouth, yeah, because they should be inside of the mouth. And let me solo them again. We move them a bit up such that they are roughly here. So you can see the mouth is here roughly in the middle. So we move it a bit up like this. And now let's take a look at how this is looking like.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all.
They should be a bit higher still, so I just move them up here using the arrow keys.
I mean, of course.
This is a quite nice position. And then I duplicate the layer, Control D, and call this here lower teeth. And I just rotate it by 180 degrees. And let me solo these two layers here again. And I take the lower one and move it down a bit like this. And now the two layers should of course also move, what they are currently not doing. And what we can do for this is to simply take the lower teeth and parent them to the lower jaw, and take the upper teeth and parent them to the upper jaw. And if we now look at the RAM preview,
I mean, of course you could start keyframing.
You can see the lower teeth are moving, the upper teeth are not. Why is this the case? This is because normally, if you look at me, for example, here, when I'm talking, you will see my upper teeth are not moving at all, yeah? This is because they are fixed in my skull, so no possibility to move. For this car, maybe it might look nice if the upper teeth are also moving. So therefore, you can look here at this slider that is at the upper jaw null, where you can control it. Here's a move amount. Yeah? And this move amount is by default set to 0. For the lower jaw, this effect is by default set to something else. Yeah? And this is because the lower one usually moves, but the upper one usually not. If you want it to move anyway a bit, you can simply increase this here.
I mean,
and then
of course you could start keyframing.
You can see the upper teeth also move. Maybe we do not want them to move that much.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this.
Yeah, maybe like this. And then the final null that we've not yet looked at is this thumb null. Yeah, let's create another layer for the thumb. So we go to Layer, New Solid, and just make it some mouse interior shape, not too light, because inside your mouse it's usually quite dark. Yeah, look at mine. Not so much light inside. So maybe such a color here, and call this thumb, and make this larger. And for the thumb, we just add some mask to shape it and feather it heavily like this. And now with the thumb, while you are talking, it moves not only up down like the teeth, but in many different directions. Yeah, so I put this below these teeth. It should basically wiggle in many different directions according to your speak, yeah, and if you, to what you're speaking. And if you are stopping to speak, it should also not wiggle, and so on. So all of this is achieved by just parenting this to the thumb null. And if you look at it, it has several controls. They are not like the teeth or the jaws that only move up and down. The thumb moves up, down, left and right, and also has some speed, how much it moves. Yeah? Let's take a look at how it's looking like.
Of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
I think this already looks quite nice. It is just moving according to what you're saying up and down. it's still located a little bit too high, so maybe let's place it here.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
This means sometimes when you're looking in the open mouse, you see here some tongue moving up and down. Sometimes it's completely hidden below. This is, I think, how your tongue looks like if you look at somebody speaking. Yeah, sometimes it appears, sometimes it's disappearing, and usually it's located here below. Okay, so very easy to create these elements. Now let's take a look at how all of this looks together.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
So we still have some problems here, and one problem we have is that here the tongue shows through at some point. Yeah, so we need to take a look at what is happening here. So this is probably easiest to adjust by just adding some other mask here, or so we say layer new solid and say this here is a matte, and just scale this down a bit like this, and put this in front of our tongue and say now track matte alpha matte, which means the tongue is never allowed to go outside of this matte region here. And the other thing I didn't like was that the tongue was still a bit light here, should be darker. So let's just add some curves effect and go to a point where we can see the tongue. Here is the tongue, and it should be significantly darker still, that it's less obvious. Yeah, these effects like adding tongues are more or work better if they are more subtle, not too intensive. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Please download the demo of Auto LipSync and play around with it yourself. Show me what you make out of it, what cool things you can create with it, and yeah, if you're lucky, you can even win a license. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and in particular enjoy playing with Auto LipSync.
If you do character animation in After Effects, you definitely want to try Auto LipSync.
With the step-by-step wizard, you create realistic mouse movements in no time.
I mean, of course you could start keyframing all of this by hand, but seriously, who wants to do that?
It's so exciting, I didn't even know I can speak. But with Auto LipSync, it's such an easy thing to do. And it's so much fun, I really can't stop talking anymore.
Shut up.
LipSync has never been so easy.